If you've been watching from the very first episode, you're probably grown fond of the main characters, Penny, Leonard, and Sheldon. Rewind to The Big Bang Theory's 12th and final season. Penny finally announced her pregnancy after being against it long enough. But what's truly shocking is that Kaley Cuoco never wanted her character to have kids in the first place. In this video, we're going to find out how she felt when the decision changed for the finale. First off, Kaley Cuoco was pretty adamant about the character's pregnancy. Honestly, the 12th season pretty much wrapped everything, including the future of every single character we love. Fans finally got the answers to all their questions as we saw a glimpse into the upcoming events of the characters' lives in the series finale. But there were also a couple of last-minute surprises, one of which was the fact that Penny and Leonard were having a baby. We're not gonna lie, a lot of us were pretty excited. On the other hand, the announcement also left quite a lot of fans feeling pretty confused. If anything, Penny had expressed that she didn't want kids time and again. It was pretty clear that that was never happening. In fact, the writers even went on to create multiple story arcs based on the very same thing. As for the executive producer of The Big Bang Theory, Steve Malero, he said that they couldn't help but rewind back to the pilot when the two first met. If you really think about it, that was an early structural piece of the entire series. And do you remember Leonard's statement? Our babies would be smart and beautiful. If anything, for Malero, that was a satisfying landing piece, which is why they diverted the entire story with a last-minute surprise. And if we're being honest, with how Penny's thoughts and feelings were being discussed pretty intimately throughout the past few seasons, this simply felt pretty out of character. If you ask us, we weren't expecting it to happen, and it was just very randomly put in there, almost just as a last-minute fix to bring the story to a complete loop. Following up, it all went back to Leonard's line in the pilot. Malero says that they already thought about how they'd bring back past arcs with the decision to make her pregnant. In fact, they even added it to Sheldon's speech when he finally won the Nobel Prize. On the other hand, they also tried to honor her feelings about having been against it for the past few seasons. All in all, it really just came down to Leonard's line in the pilot about their kids. On top of that, their relationship was definitely the jumping off point of this whole show, so it was pretty much important for the executive producer and writers to honor that relationship. And maybe this was also a great way to wrap up the show, with them ending in a happy place. On top of that, Malero was the brains behind the idea, because he felt it was a pretty crucial decision in the couple's lives. It's how they jumped over a bunch of pregnancy tropes only to find out that Penny was 2 months pregnant. Along with that, they fast-forwarded the 2-month jump while Penny simply couldn't wrap her head around it. Sure, she seemed pretty excited, but maybe she wasn't so sure about how she felt anyway. Not to mention, Kaley Cuoco wasn't on board with this decision. According to Malero and Holland, they said Cuoco and Johnny Galecki were pretty happy with the couple's ending. But as for Cuoco, she wasn't too sure about her character's send-off. And 3 years after the ending, she opened up about her true feelings in the book, The Big Bang Theory, the definitive inside story of the epic hit series. For her, she actually didn't want her character to be pregnant because she loved that message of Penny not wanting kids. And if we're being honest, a lot of fans felt the same as Cuoco. Think about it. That's a pretty powerful message that not everyone wants to have kids to complete their life. Sometimes couples are doing great without an extended family anyway. On top of that, let's not forget how they had disagreed all season long about having children, because they definitely had some pretty opposing views. And it was beautiful to see how the couple was trying to handle it, respecting each other's wishes. Yep, we didn't forget the almost sperm donation for Zach either. Having said that, the series finale seemed like the decision was just taken for the couple, and in some ways that didn't feel so right. Let's not forget that we never managed to see the argument completely resolved, as they went on to add a surprise pregnancy instead. Coming up, do the producers regret it? Well, Holland and Malero haven't really mentioned any regrets, but they definitely support their decision to end Penny's story with her pregnancy. Although if you take a look at The Big Bang Theory, the definitive inside story of the epic hit series, the show's creator Chuck Lorre talks about his regrets over the portrayal of Penny's characters. For him, it was definitely one of the most underwritten characters in the show early on. In fact, it was pretty obvious to the fans that the writers couldn't move past the girl next door more narrative soon enough, even though Kaley was definitely capable of a great deal more than what she had to do anyway. Or at least that's what Lori said. Not only that, Cuoco agreed that she felt that her character was overly sexualized as well. In fact, if we're being honest, it was leaning more towards the blonde stereotype that they've emphasized in the first couple of seasons, with subtle jokes now and then. And maybe the fact that Penny was supposed to be a 3-season character is exactly why they didn't pay a lot of attention to her character either. But after all the fan support, the showrunners kept her character, making it one of the most integral ones on the show, after they realized what Cuoco could achieve as an actress. Up next, Penny's character development was one of the key elements throughout the series. Lori talked about how they realized how they focused on character development, not just for an episode, but every step of the way. Over time, they showed Penny's intelligence about people, something a lot of the other PhD characters didn't seem to have. But most importantly, it was her intelligence about relationships that kept her as the group advisor for the longest time. She knew exactly how to get out of a situation and understood the dynamics between people, social situations, and all of that stuff. If we're being honest, Penny was definitely a fully fleshed out character with thoughts and intricate feelings that were definitely explored in the past few seasons. And her decision to end her story with something the character had been very much against definitely felt like a betrayal for fans. On the other hand, even though Cuoco disagrees with the ending, she said it was cute how the writers did it all at the end with Penny's surprise pregnancy. And all in all, I'm glad. What's more, tension between Kaley Cuoco and Jim Parsons. On screen, Sheldon and Penny had a sort of brother-sister relationship that was just too cute to handle, but it seems like off-screen, things probably weren't that great. Did you know that CBS was in talks to renew The Big Bang Theory for at least another 2 seasons? After all, it was getting way too popular among its core audience, but they ended up pulling back from the idea when Parsons said he wanted to focus more on young Sheldon. And while we already knew that Johnny Galecki thinks the announcement of the end of the show could have been handled better, it seems like Cuoco wasn't too happy about the cancellation either. If anything, she felt pretty blindsided by the news. And of course, as we mentioned, she wasn't too happy about the end of her character on the show anyway. With that said, the fact that the show was canceled because of Parsons' transition over to young Sheldon didn't sit well with her, and ended up creating tension between the two co-stars. On top of that, the executive producer for The Big Bang Theory said that the two barely looked at each other during the episode run-through. All in all, there were a lot of hard feelings between Parsons and his two co-stars, who weren't too glad about how everything was wrapped up in the season's finale. Coming up, Cuoco and Parsons weren't the only two in an alleged battle. It turns out Galecki wasn't too thrilled at how Parsons handled his exit from the show either. In fact, he told sources that he found his co-star's decision less than positive, and used the words shocked and blindsided as he described how he felt about the cancellation. On top of that, he also talked about how it wasn't about Jim's decision, but more about the fact that he hadn't even had a conversation with his castmates first. And while he understands his co-star's decision for wanting to depart The Big Bang Theory, it was definitely worth talking about. On the other hand, Galecki also says it might have been a blessing in disguise, because he allegedly had been feuding with his co-star, Mayim Bialik. That's right, there was a lot going on behind the scenes on the show that you didn't know about. But some fans were sharp enough to notice some weird behaviors between Galecki and Bialik. Even though they were pretty pleasant when interacting with each other, they weren't really following each other on Instagram. And in today's world, you gotta admit, that's a pretty big red flag. Finally, will the cast be willing to work together again? Well, ever since the show ended, all the cast members moved on to other exciting projects. We see Mayim Bialik making small appearances in Young Sheldon, while having starred in Call Me Kat. On the other hand, Cuoco was able to flex her acting talent in The Flight Attendant, and has even been voice acting as Harley Quinn on the HBO animated series. And obviously Parsons is doing pretty well on Young Sheldon, as the show enters its 6th season. Having said that, none of the cast members have said anything about working together on a new project. But we hope there's one coming up soon enough. That's a wrap for this video. What's your take on Penny's pregnancy and the series finale of The Big Bang Theory? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.